Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the photography show. And if you're watching this live streaming on the Adobe YouTube channel as well, welcome in also. You may have guessed, this is me, David Noton. I've been a professional landscape and travel photographer now for over 30 years. And I'd like to talk to you this afternoon a little bit about my work, what I do, and how changes in the world of photography have influenced the way that I work and manage my pictures these days. And I want to particularly talk to you about how I'm now incorporating Lightroom Creative Cloud into my workflow. But let's start first, if it's okay with you. We're going to spend about 10 minutes or so just traveling around the world and talking about pictures, if that's okay, because really that's what it all comes down to, isn't it? It's all about the pictures. So let's hit the road. From Argentina here to the Loch Rannoch on a beautiful dawn morning last May. These are the moments that I live for as a photographer. I got up at about 3:30 because, of course, mid-May in the Scottish Highlands, very long days, and I went down to the loch and I stood in my wellies in the water, trying not to move, trying not to create my own reflections, shooting this idyllic scene. Now, way back in the mists of time, in 1980, when I first got into photography, I went on a family holiday up here to Loch Rannoch, and I shot this scene. I was just starting to become enthusiastic about photography, and when I got back from that family holiday, there was that little box of yellow slides, remember them? Kodachromes, and I saw one of those transparencies and I thought, did I shoot that? And from that moment on, photography had me hooked. I've been trying to recreate that kind of picture for the last 37 years until just last May. Finally, I got those kind of conditions again back at the very same location. For me, this game of photography is all about being in the right place at the right time. You just don't get pictures like this by accident. And so I'll put an inordinate amount of work into being there for these kind of moments. I made a panorama as well. Really, when I go on a trip, to whether it's to Scotland or to the far side of the world, I'm always conscious of the fact that I want to produce not hundreds or thousands of okay pictures, but I'm always going for that one quality image. I'd travel to the far side of the world for one picture if that picture was good enough. It's all about quality over quantity. Which is why, just recently, just come back from Colombia, just last week, we're shooting there in Colombia. This is the ancient walled city of Cartagena. Fabulous experience shooting there. But again, always trying to get the pictures that sum up the essence of a destination. You can imagine when I've gone all the way to Colombia to capture a moment like this, a hummingbird just in flight. Very difficult picture to create. They are incredibly fast. There's no way you can follow focus with them. It's all about setting up the shot, setting up the point of focus, and then waiting for a hummingbird to fly into the picture at the right moment. So I'll spend hours, days, weeks working on a picture. So that one picture then becomes very, very valuable to me, see? And it doesn't have to be shot on the far side of the world. This was shot just last month on the Jurassic Coast. I know the Jurassic Coast very well because I live in Dorset. This is my home patch. I've spent a whole career shooting the Jurassic Coast. But even after 33 years as a professional, I'm still finding new places to shoot here, still discovering new vantage points, and still revel in working on my own doorstep. Just before I got on the plane to Colombia, the night before, we shot the super blue moonrise over Stonehenge. Again, a shoot that took a lot of preparation, a lot of thought about how I could capture the moon just at that decisive moment when it popped over the horizon. I wanted to emphasize the size of the supermoon with a known graphic-shaped object, and what better object to use than Stonehenge. It all came together for me beautifully. And I'll spend a lot of time preparing my shoots and a lot of time waiting for the light. The actual photography itself sometimes seems to me like a minimal, tiny fraction of the whole process. So with this picture here, shot in Tuscany, for example, I found the location. It's a well-known spot, but it's all about the light, isn't it? And really, the light will transform a scene like this. And so when I found a location, when I've got a good idea for a picture, I'll just keep going back time and time and time again until finally all the elements come together. The direction of the light early in the morning, and of course the detail in the sky, a little bit of mist lying in the middle distance there, all these elements coming together. Now, of course, Mother Nature is the one who decides on what will be delivered on any given morning or evening shoot. My job is to make sure that I'm there in the right place at the right time, and that's what I'll put an inordinate amount of work into. But it's not all just about landscapes. I love to photograph people as well. I think when you travel all the way to Sri Lanka, it's a beautiful country with some fantastic landscapes, gorgeous curries, I have to say, as well. Absolutely beautiful food. But it's the people. Half the time, it's the people you meet on your travels who really can sum up the essence of a trip. And this is the face of Sri Lanka for me. This woman just beaming at me as I just accosted her in on a tea plantation. So this is my life, and it has been my life now for so long. And of course, since I took this picture way back in the mid-90s, so much has changed in the world of photography. The way we capture images, the technology we use, the cameras we use, and of course, what we do with our pictures subsequently has changed massively. But the essence of photography remains the same. It's still about being in the right place at the right time. It's still about the simple, bold compositions, and it's still about the quality of the light. That hasn't changed, and I don't believe it ever will change. So this image here, again, shot over 20 years ago in the high Canadian Arctic, shot using film. Back then, the way I stored my pictures was of sheets and sheets and sheets of transparencies hanging in filing cabinets, laboriously captioned with little sticky labels. Talking about it now, it seems so archaic, doesn't it? Like a world gone by. I'll get on to in a minute how I store and work with my pictures nowadays. But I've still got those slides. I've still got those filing cabinets up above the office, racks and racks and racks of them. But all those images have been scanned and now incorporated into our master digital library, which I use Lightroom CC to manage. Again, another picture from the mid-90s, panoramic, shot on a panoramic film camera there on the Namib Sands. If you're wondering, this little figure here in the picture, that's my wife, Wendy. Just giving the whole scene a sense of scale, a whole sense of... I know when I was shooting that picture, that one figure in the picture would transform it. Okay, so I'd like to now let's set the scene. You can imagine I've got this huge library of images dating back over 30 years from scenes like this in South Africa, the one I just showed you, the Namib Desert, taking you all the way up to the Canadian Yukon territories, And in my years as a photographer, I've been lucky enough to travel to not quite all faunas of the globe, but certainly many of them. So you can imagine you put a lot of work and a lot of effort and travel into being somewhere like this, Kluhani National Park in the high Canadian Arctic. So, a massive collection of images. Let's just talk then. I'm going to bring you out of here and introduce you to Lightroom CC. Now, can I ask, just a show of hands here, how many of you use Lightroom, the normal Lightroom Classic? Yeah, most of you. How many of you have started using Lightroom CC, the cloud-based system? Okay, a few of you. Great. Okay. So what I'm doing now is basically in the process of taking that 30 years work and putting it all in the cloud. Now, let me just explain something before I move on 1 second here. Just come out of this. So what I do, what fuels all of my photography, all of my travels is this, the F11 Photography magazine, which we've been publishing now for 7 years, believe it or not. And every month we publish a magazine issue, and in each magazine issue are different stories, different features, and it takes a lot of work. And but last summer, excuse me, just log in here. Technology has a way of messing you around when you need it the most. Take it from me that every magazine has its features and articles, and it takes a lot of work. But last summer, we were the victims of a cyber attack, a ransomware cyber attack. I don't know where it came from. Could have been Slough, could have been North Korea. Nevertheless, our entire website was taken down and created a huge amount of upset and work for us. So the security of this massive collection of images, this lifetime's work, has become a very important factor. Well, it was important before, but doubly so after this cyber attack. Now, what I do with my images in the existing photo library that we have in the office is backed up, like I'm sure most of you have a similar system, backed up to various different hard drives in various different locations. On top of that, go away. On top of that, we've got, I'm now putting the whole collection onto the cloud in the form of Lightroom CC. All that's giving me is a secondary backup or a third-rate backup as on top of the network system. And with Lightroom, the photography plan, you get both Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic. So it's certainly worth thinking about. Now, every image I've taken in the master collection is there available to me. So we're in Lightroom CC, and what I'd like to do now is talk you through the post-production on this particular picture here. It was shot in France last autumn. It's of a vineyard at a place called Chateau Chalons. And you all, I'm sure many of you are familiar with post-production in Lightroom CC. It's pretty similar, Lightroom CC Classic. It's pretty similar in CC, just a different look to the picture. But with all my post-production, I like to keep things simple. I believe strongly in getting it right in camera, making the minimum of adjustments to a picture. I work to an ethos of the less you do, the better. And if in doubt, do nothing. I like to get my pictures as perfect as I can in camera, and just as it was in the old days when we used to mess around with chemicals and enlargers, if you've got a perfectly exposed image, just as when I used to have a perfectly exposed negative, making a print was absolutely easy. Same with post-production. So let's look at this picture, and I believe strongly also that before you wade in and start playing with all sorts of different sliders and adjustments, it's best to just put the kettle on, step back, look at the picture and ask yourself, what does it need doing? And in this particular instance, everything's there, all the information is there. If I just show the histogram up the top here, click on that, click on, I want to see basically the range of tones in the picture. So what I want to do is, first of all, just come back here. First thing I'm going to do is look at my brightness and my darkness. Hang on, what's going on up here? Light up here. There we go. So I think what I need to do is darken down the sky to give the sky some more impact. First thing I normally do when I'm looking at an image is look at the black and the white points. And if I grab the white point slider here, hold down my Alt key, and if I move the slider to the right, that starts telling me where I'm starting to clip information. So with this particular image, I don't have any scope really for adjusting the white points. I'm just going to leave them as they are there. With my black point, I'm going to look at this, and I can move my black point slider to the left before I start. Well, can you see where that yellow starts appearing? That's telling me where I'm starting to clip shadow information. So what I'm doing here is just making sure that I've got a perfect rich black in the picture and a perfect pure white. Next thing I'm going to do is look at the actual general overall tone of the picture, and I want to just darken it down a touch there to give it more impact. So I'm going to use the exposure slider there and pull that back until the image has the kind of richness that I want there. You can use the tone curve as well, which I like to do as well. Same sort of thing. If you move the tone curve down to the right, you start bringing in density, or up, you start increasing the density of the picture. Looking at now at this picture, I'm just going to give it a bit more exposure there. Already we've got more drama to the image. And now just step back and look. When you're working on your pictures, work on the basis that just Adobe have given you the option of adjusting something. Just because there's a slider there doesn't mean you have to use it. I believe in doing as little as possible. Keep it simple. It always works best. Overworked pictures can just look too overcooked. I think it's really difficult to learn that kind of subtlety, actually. I see so many pictures where the colors are way over the top, you know. Keep it subtle. Okay, so the next thing I do is come down here to the color part of the equation, and I'm looking at this here, and generally speaking, I shoot with my camera set to daylight white balance, and I hardly ever alter the white balance of pictures subsequently. So on this particular autumn afternoon in France, the light was really low in the sun was low in the sky. It was quite warm. There's no way I want to start messing with Mother Nature. I'm going to keep things simple. If the light's warm, I want to record it as warm. That's why I have the setting in the camera set to daylight white balance, and it's why now here in post-production I hardly ever adjust my colors. So can you see here it says as shot? That's what the camera recorded the white balance as being. I'm not going to adjust that at all. Now come down here and we have the option of introducing a bit of vibrance into the picture. Now I think this is a really easy part of the post-production process, where it's so easy to completely ruin your pictures. I think this area of the develop module should come with its own public health warning, quite frankly, because, for example, if I take this vibrance slider and start dialing in color boosting the colors, which this slider does, you can see very quickly it starts to look overly cooked. Generally speaking, I might put in a sort of teaspoonful of vibrance, depending on the picture. Always bear in mind also that if you're introducing contrast into a picture, you're boosting the colors as well. So I'm just going to keep it nice and subtle and have round about +10 or so there on my vibrance. By the way, vibrance boosts the colors which are not already saturated, whereas the saturation slider boosts all the colors. Generally speaking, I hardly ever touch the saturation slider. I just maybe put in a bit of vibrance. Be aware of the fact that if you spent a long day in front of the computer working on your pictures, you can start to think that just a bit more color vibrance will give that picture just a bit more impact, whereas in fact the reverse is the truth. You often reach a point whereby you very quickly reach a point where you're detracting from the image of the impact of the image. So now I'm looking at this picture and it's getting to where I want it to be. I just want to bring down that sky there, make that a bit darker. So to do that, I'm going to use this tool here, and it's the brush tool, the adjustment brush tool. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first of all, make sure by pressing O on my keyboard, there it says Show Mask Overlay. And now what I'm going to do is adjust the size of my brush here. Can you see it on the screen? I'm going to do that using my brackets key. Okay, and I'm going to come down to my brush settings here. Can you see there? Where's the size of the brush is marked there. And now I'm just going to paint in. What I'm doing is selecting an area, okay? Just come down here. And I want to make sure I'm not doing anything to the picture yet. I'm just selecting the area, okay? So that's all this does. Let's select a bigger brush area. So now I'm going to carry on painting in here. And all I'm doing is selecting this area. I want to select this area down here, just below the skyline as well. Okay. Now when I've done that, now I come back and I press O again. And now I come up to here and sorry, I need to put my glasses on. I'm going to come back and I want to darken that area down. Okay. Just introducing a bit of drama to that sky there. Put a touch of contrast in there. And I think that's made really quite a radical difference to the image. I find the adjustment brush such a useful tool to use in Lightroom, along with the gradient tool. So let's now just look at the before and the after picture here. Down here. Show original, and back to where we started. So that's really a very quick post-production on that picture. I think it's typical for many of the images that I work with. I don't actually spend hours on every picture. Usually it's just a few minutes on one picture. So Lightroom CC, the cloud-based service, has become much more a part of my workflow. It's given me that security to my images now. I can access any picture that I want from any device, from any location. As a publisher of the F11 photography magazine, that gives me the ability to work on images anywhere, on features anywhere, anytime. Really, really useful aspect of that.